Okay, YouTube, in our last video we looked at the distance formula. In this video we're going to focus on the midpoint formula. And so what we're going to concern ourselves with here is the ability to say if I have 2 points in the xy coordinate plane, and what we'll do is we'll give these a name here. I suppose we'll call this x1, y1, our first point. We'll call this x2, y2. What if we wanted to find the midpoint between these 2 points right here? And so if we were to imagine this, kind of dotted line here, the midpoint would lie kind of right between these two things. Well, the interesting fact is that because we know the coordinates of these 2 points, x1, y1, x2, y2, then what we could say is, well, then the midpoint would have to have an x value that would be kind of like the average x value here between these two x values. And these two y values, this one's at a height of y1 and this one up here is at a height of y2. Well, if we wanted the midpoint, then we would actually want to find the average y value. And so what we're going to do is we are going to find the average x and the average y value given the x and y values of the 2 points respectively. And so our midpoint formula is as follows. We say that really the midpoint of a line segment joining 2 points x1, y1, and x2, y2 is given by this midpoint formula here, where what we're going to do is we're going to label this as the average x value is our x value of our midpoint point, and this is our average y value, which is the y value of our average point between those two. And so this formula is pretty straightforward. Just add up and average the x values, add up and average the y values, and we'll make that our new coordinate pair. And so looking at this, I say find the midpoints. Use the points that we plotted in example number 1, also supporting ourselves graphically. Well, for this particular example, part A, I say the midpoint of points A and D are what we're concerned with here. And so from my example 1, I chose to use these points here for A, D, and E. And A was 2, 3, and D was negative 2, 3. As a matter of fact, these had symmetry over the y-axis points A and D. And so if we were to talk about a midpoint, logically, we could see here that the midpoint would have to lie between these 2 points here. But with respect to why this must happen here, well, one reason why it must happen is because of the y-axis symmetry. The y-axis symmetry is going to cause this midpoint to be right on the y-axis. It lies right on the y-axis. And the other thing here is that basically, given these 2 points, we have negative 2, 3. And 2, 3, what we're going to do is to find the midpoint, we are going to average the x values and average the y values. So the way this looks is when you average two numbers, you add them up and you divide by 2. And the same thing goes for our y values here. We're going to add these up and we're going to divide by 2. So our x values here are negative 2 and positive 2, and our y values here are just 3 and 3. So the neat thing about this is we get 0 halves and 6 halves, which really leads us to the point 0, 3. Which, fascinating, this is the point 0, 3 here. We have, I guess, verified it algebraically as well as graphically. And so what I want to look at now for this last example, it says the midpoints of A and E. Where do you notice this midpoint will lie? And so looking at A and E here, we kind of looked at this example last time. E just has opposite coordinates as A. And so in terms of where the midpoint's going to lie here, you can see that they're kind of diametrically opposed. I have this hunch that it's going to land at the origin. And so what I'm going to see here is as we find the midpoint, let's go ahead and do this, the midpoint. We have our 2 original coordinates, and these are negative 2, negative 3, and 2, 3. As we find the midpoint, this is going to be a lot easier because all we're doing is averaging the x values, add them together, divide by 2, and we'll average the y values, negative 3 plus positive 3 divided by 2. And in each instance, what we end up with is this 0 halves for both our x and y coordinate pair, our parts. So we get 0, 0 is the midpoint of these 2 points that we see here. Cheers.